Well, thanks everyone for coming out. I guess I want to start by congratulating Alan Moore on an awesome race. It was both of us. I mean, I think this was one of the most amazing races that I've ever run, and it was just an honor to be up there racing against him and his amazing dog team. And you know, we were having the race of our life. There's no doubt. Sorry, I'm probably going to cry a lot. This whole thing is still a little bit overwhelming for me, but in the end, you know, like I said, we had 900 miles of bliss. It was like a magic carpet ride. I mean, at one point I got charged by a moose, and it came right up the team, and I hit it with a ski pole, and everyone came out unscathed. And at that point I was like, wow, we were really going to do this. Like, if we didn't get taken out by that moose, there's nothing that can take us out, you know, and that's sort of the mentality I had all race. We always say, if you're gonna win the race, everything's got to go your way. And everything up until Coghlan Lake went my way. And it was, you know, the plan that I laid out before the race, I stuck to it all the way through. And that was something that I'd never been able to really pull off in the past. I've always had ambitious schedules and always wanted to run a race like this race. And thank you. And we were able to do it. And I had 13 dogs, which was more important to me than pretty much anything, because this race, like we all know, is all about the dogs. And having 13 dogs all the way to my finish was totally amazing for me. And I just want to start by saying I owe everything to my dog team. They were perfect. There were 13 dogs that pulled their butts off and did everything that I asked them to do. And in the end, you know, accidents happen. And unfortunately, the accident that happened to me on Coghlan Lake took us out of the race. It's a team effort, and we were a solid team until I fell down and cracked my head. And at that moment, it was I didn't, you know, it happened so fast, and it happened at a point in the race where I was really exhausted. I was tired. I had been kicking and pulling and working my ass off, as well as the dogs, for, you know, 900 miles or 850 miles, and we after I fell down, I was kind of in denial for a little while. And you guys all saw my Facebook post. That was the turn of events that happened, and we don't have to go through that. You guys can ask questions once I sort of lay this all out. But you know, I made a conscious decision to hit that button, and it was not easy. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make, because I'm a true believer in, you know, surviving and finishing everything that you start. And I sat there, and after struggling and trying so hard, and then finally realizing that my brain, my body just wasn't in the condition to go forward. And it was hard because it was only 12 miles from a checkpoint, you know, and man, it was talking about swallowing some pride. It was pretty tough. But I sat there and looked at the tracker for an hour, and I finally decided, after looking at my dog team and seeing that, you know, they were all perfectly great, they were all in good condition, but they knew something was wrong with me. And you know, and to all dog mushers, it's pretty much common knowledge that the vibe that you're throwing out, the attitude that you have, flows right into your dog team. And it was doing that. The dogs were noticing that I was not myself. I was not the Brent Sass that we usually are. I was not being wild and free anymore. I was confused and unable to really form a plan to get to Braeburn. And I mean, I was making conscious decisions, and you know, I was still able to feed the dogs. I was still able to do these things, but they were taking me 3 times as long as they usually take you. I went from being an 8-year Quest veteran to a rookie who was, you know, trying to survive out there, and that was a helpless position to be in. So I hit the button, and after that, I want to give the Yukon Quest and Doug and Scott and everyone involved at this race, I just I can't thank them enough for making the process as easy as it could possibly be. I never expected to, when the Rangers showed up, and they reiterated if they helped me that my race was over, and I had already made that decision, obviously, and I was unsure of what. I mean, I have 100% confidence in these guys in the Quest, but I was still unsure about what it was going to be like when I pulled into the checkpoint. It never happened to me, and I never even fathomed it would ever happen to me pulling into the checkpoint without my dogs. And I think the Rangers, because they gave me the ability to get to the checkpoint and make sure that I was safe, and then they also stayed back there and took care of my dogs, or at least watched them to make sure that they were in good hands. And when I got to that checkpoint, it was overwhelming because I knew that I was off. Obviously, I had made that I had spent 6 hours out there by myself trying to figure out whether I was really hurt or not. And after coming to that conclusion, I needed to get help, and I had all the help I could possibly have. They immediately took all the precautions, and knowing that Scott was right there and he was holding my hand and saying he was going back and get my dogs, that was a really big relief. Because up until then, I mean, I'm about to ruin some stuff here. Up until then, I was, that whole snow machine ride from the dogs to the checkpoint, I was worried about my dog team. And, worried about their health and well-being, not so much, because I knew that they were healthy and I knew that they were fine, and there was someone watching them. But I was just, worried about them getting back to the checkpoint and keeping that positive attitude that I try and have at all times. And I was starting to lose that a little bit out there. And that is, in the end, one of the main reasons, because, like I said, your energy flows into the dogs, and I felt that it could turn pretty quickly. And the last thing I want to do is hinder that dog team from being the best they can possibly be. And they were so amazing the whole way, and I let them down in the end. And accidents happen, but I let that dog team down, and it was really hard pill to swallow. But back to the checkpoint. Again, the Quest did an amazing job of supporting me, getting me to the hospital. The doctors, everybody took really good care of me, and thank God there wasn't anything extremely serious. I didn't have any, my brain wasn't bleeding or anything like that, and I seemed to be on the road to recovery. I'm still not 100%. There's no doubt about that. I still have a gut-wrenching headache. I've got some numbness in my hands. It's still a hard pill to swallow. I had to stop the race, and I'll be thinking about it for a long time. But in the end, I preserved my dog team. The dog team finished happily. It was amazing to see. I got to see the video of them coming to Braeburn, and I thank everyone that was there cheering them on because they deserved it. And yeah, I can't thank everyone involved with this whole race organization and all my friends and handlers and my family for being 100% supportive of me and my dogs. And we're moving forward as positively as we possibly can. I don't know, I really hope to run the Iditarod in a couple weeks, and it all depends on my health. And I know the health of my dogs is 100%, and they're ready to rock and roll. I've been able to spend a little time with them. They're actually on their way back to Fairbanks now. They deserve to be on their houses and away from the dog truck and all the stuff of traveling. So they're going to go back there, and I got good handlers taking care of them back there. So they're in good hands. And yeah, we're just moving forward. So I guess that's what I have to say. I'm sure you guys have lots of questions. So have at it.
Brent, can you tell us the extent of your injuries? Like, was it a concussion?
Yeah, it was a pretty serious concussion. And anyone who has had head trauma before. I think those people can clearly understand like what I was going through. It's almost impossible for me to explain the state I was in. I had never been in that state before. I had never had a serious head injury, and it's a really helpless feeling. like I said, I mean, something that usually takes me 10 minutes to do took me an hour to do, you know, and that is, like, I am a legit person in the wilderness. I feel confident 100% of the time. Like, I don't ever feel like I'm going to put myself into trouble. I never feel like I'm going to put my dogs into trouble. And that is in the end why I hit that button, because I felt like there was a risk there, that I was going to put myself and my dogs into harm. And I mean, at one point I half-heartedly got in my sleeping bag at the second time I stopped, and I was kind of in and out of sleeping, not really sleeping, but, you know, coming to and trying to decipher what was going on. And I woke up and my arm and my hand is like laying out in the snow. I mean, that's a rookie mistake. Like, you don't do that when it's 30 below zero out. And right there, I just realized that it was no longer in my control. I was somewhere else, and I couldn't take care of myself properly. And up until that point, I had done a really good job, I felt, of taking care of my dogs, and I felt like it was just going to go downhill from there. So I needed to make a decision, and that's the decision I made. So the extent of my injuries at this point, get back to answering your question, is, you know, I did have a concussion, and the doctors, you know, they took x-rays, they did all the tests, and luckily there isn't any, like I said, no bleeding on the brain, which was something that, you know, even though I was in that terrible state, I have had friends that have had trauma before. And you know, back in the day when I was just getting started in mushing, we were on a trip. I was with Josh and some other friends, and one of our friends suffered a concussion, and he was like a 3-year-old. And we were 150 miles in the wilderness, and we had to load him and pull him out. And that whole time that I was out there, I was thinking about that situation and going, this is what he felt like, you know. And obviously I don't think I had it quite as bad as he did, but like it was a legitimate thought in my brain, like, this has potential of getting worse and worse and worse. And no race, no win, nothing is worth sacrificing the health and well-being of myself or the dogs. So, or the credibility of the race as well. I mean, you have to think about all that when you're out there, and I think that I made the right decision, and I don't regret anything that I did. As hard as it is to not finish the race, I feel like it was the right decision. Even sitting back here feeling all right today, I don't feel like I could have continued the race.
Just to follow up, was there any injury to your hand or arm? You mentioned they were outside the.
Yeah, no, I mean it was hurting, but I think I came to. I mean, I was awake enough to get it out before it turned black or anything like that. And I think, you know, I've got a little bit of nerve stuff going on, and I think that just has to do with the trauma to my head. But there wasn't any. I was able to come out unscathed as far as any frostbite or anything like that out on the trail.
You say you pushed the button. That was the emergency locator?
Yep. I pushed the button. The one that I tried, I looked at it, and obviously I wasn't going to hit the SOS or the 911 button or anything like that, because I didn't feel like I was going to die right then and there. But I hit the button that just alerted Doug and the rest of the crew in the Quest that there was a problem. And I knew that as soon as I hit that button, that they would send somebody out, because people know me, and they know my reputation, and they know who I am. And if I'm hitting a button, then I need help. And so I was and it was within an hour that the Rangers were there. It was an extremely quick response, for sure.
Brent, this is Emily in Carmex. Earlier you said you always wanted to run a race like this, and this year you were able to do it. I've talked to you a little bit about the way that you've trained, and I wonder if you are going to sort of move forward training your dogs the same way. You think you can maybe repeat a race like this in the future?
Oh, yeah, I hope I'm going to repeat this race 5, 6, 10, 15 times again, you know. My dogs are in perfect condition. I was the one that had the problem and had the accident. That was, you know, there are ways that I can do better. I know everyone can always do better, but as far as, yes, I'm going to continue training my dogs this way. It obviously worked. I mean, we had an amazing, amazing race. Every checkpoint that I left, those dogs were barking and banging to go. And, you know, even in Carmex, one of the hardest checkpoints to ever leave, me was fumbling around, took 10 minutes longer than I needed to in Carmex because I was a bit of a wreck. But my dog team are all 13 dogs standing up, ready to go. I mean, and they didn't bark and bang leaving that checkpoint, but they strolled right out of there knowing that we were headed to the finish line. And that was amazing. And I wouldn't change one thing that I did in my schedule for the dogs, because the dogs were in wonderful shape. And I will continue, and I hope to come out and repeat this exact race and hopefully get to compete with Alan all the way to the finish line.
Brent,
Brent, go ahead.
oh hey Brent, this is Susanna Caldwell from the Alaska Dispatch. Speaking of repeating, I know the Iditarod's only a few weeks away, but I think you're going to have a lot of eyes on you this year based on your Quest performance. What are you going to do at this point to kind of prepare for that race? You say right now you're still looking to do it, so what's next?
I mean, the biggest thing for me is rest right now. I've been given strict orders from the doctor and everyone around me that I can't do anything for a week or two, and I think I'm going to have a bodyguard on me at all times, because I have a hard time not doing anything. But for the next week, I'm on rest and relaxation. The Iditarod is a different animal for me. I've only run that race twice, so it's not. I don't have the confidence, of the trail and all the things that I have in that race. But I'm going to go out gunning. I'm going to go out to try and win the Iditarod. I mean, I was competing against the team that's gotten second in the Iditarod the last couple of years, so I've got that confidence. As far as other steps I'm going to take, I'm going to be wearing a helmet. There's no doubt about it. I can't take another hit to the head. So I'm definitely going to be, over the next couple weeks, researching and doing everything I can to try and find a helmet that will work well for me out on the trail. I have to take every precaution possible to make sure that I don't have another head trauma. And it's amazing it doesn't happen more often. I mean, there were countless times in this race where I'd wake up and dodge a bullet from hitting a tree, or I know that if you talk to any musher out there, every one of them are going to say that, like, man, it could just happen at any point out there, because we are sleep deprived and we are a little bit off a lot of times, especially late in the race. And so until it happens to you, you don't, until you fall off your bike when you're a kid and bang your head, and when we were kids, you didn't wear a helmet. And now everyone wears a helmet. You go to a ski resort, and when I was skiing when I was a kid, nobody wore a helmet. Now you go to a ski resort and people are skiing, and you're an anomaly if you're not wearing a helmet out there. So and I don't know that mushing will be that way, but I know that there are sprint mushers and there are people in the lower 48 that wear helmets often when they're running dogs, and I never looked down upon it, but I get it 100% more now than I ever did. And I'll probably be, I don't know if I'll be the first one, but I'll be one of the only ones out there. But I'll definitely be wearing a helmet this coming race in the Iditarod, and probably for as long as I can find something that works well, and something that's comfortable and is gonna protect me. I'll be wearing a helmet when I dog mush for the rest of my life.
Brent, do you think maybe a rule should be enacted that mushers should wear helmets? I know the Iron Dog, that's the snow machine race, they have to wear body armor and a helmet.
I don't think there should be a rule. I'm not about just bringing rules down on people. I think that people can look at my situation and see how close that I came to possibly hurting myself, and it should be a choice. I'm all about being safe, but I'm not about restricting every single aspect of life. You don't want to learn the hard way, but I'm not going to tell people that they're stupid for not wearing a helmet. I'm just going to wear a helmet because I've been there, and I've had that problem, and I've had to back out of a race that was the most important race of my life, and because of that, I'm going to take those precautions. But I'm not going to ask anybody else or force anybody else to do the same thing that I'm going to do.
Brent, this is Emily Swing again. I wanted to ask you, earlier you said that, sorry to change subjects so quick.
That's all right.
But you were talking about how, you let your dog team down, which I think a lot of people would argue with. But the reason I'm asking about that is I've had other mushers besides you tell me that they are actually the weakest link in their team. So do you feel like you sort of had, that experience, and what might you do differently to perhaps, be a stronger musher for your dog team?
I mean, I do. I think in the end, it was an accident, and you can't change that. It's not like I made conscious decisions to hurt my dogs or anything like that. But I think that I can do a better job of getting better rest in the second half of the race. I can do a better job of eating and preparing better so that my condition is better at that point in the race. I mean, I definitely feel like I wore myself out to the point where I was falling asleep on the back of the sled and could not help it. And those are the things that I have to change. I have to do a better job of the whole race I camped. I didn't stay in checkpoints. And I do that for a lot of reasons, but one of the main reasons is I get to sit out there and make all that food that I have out on the trail and start my cooker and make and I was eating like a king. I have amazing friends that make me awesome food. And so I was eating like a king at each one of those stops. But as we got down the race course farther, the stops get less. I'm not like that last stop in Carmax. There was nowhere that I was gonna, heat up a good meal and have a lot of extra food and water. And I should have done a better job of grabbing that stuff. And I did end up stopping, which was my plan. And that decision right there is probably one of the most pivotal ones for me in this race, is that I planned on stopping outside of Carmax. And I should have done a better job of grabbing the food that I needed and making sure that I fired that cooker up. And even if I wasn't going to, because I had brought food out of there and water, and so I didn't necessarily need to start my cooker, and I should have planned on starting my cooker for me more than the dogs. Because if I would have done that, I maybe would have had a better meal in me. I would have been more hydrated, and I maybe wouldn't have fallen asleep on the back of that sled, fallen off, got a concussion, and things may have played out differently. So I can do a lot.
Do you have an opinion on whether the race should look at adding more mandatory downtime along the course?
No, I don't think that should. No, I think that's a bad decision. I think that this race is unique in the way that everyone can run. The reason that I was having the race I was is because I was free to run the kind of race I wanted to run. I ran in an exact opposite race of everybody else. I blew through all the checkpoints. If we're scheduled to have to stop at the checkpoints, I can't run the race that I just ran. And the only reason that I was competing with Alan Moore and Hugh Neff and those guys is because I was able to run a race that allowed me to do that. There's no way that if I had to stop for a certain amount of hours at a certain amount of checkpoints that I would be able to compete with those guys, with the dog team, with the race that I ran today. And I think it allows people to be more creative. And I think that's what made this race so exciting, was I was on a completely different schedule and I was blowing through the checkpoints, and Alan and I were leapfrogging the whole way. And I think that was just amazing. It's amazing for me. It's amazing for Alan. It's amazing for the fans, the spectators, and the sport. And so I don't think that by giving more mandatory rest, it helps anything. I think as mushers, we have to do better. And like I said, I gave my dogs the rest they needed. I did not do as good a job as I could of taking care of myself. And I mean, no matter what, we're going to be wore down. We're going to be exhausted and sleep deprived by that state in the race. But I think there's steps that we can take. And, obviously, Alan took some of those steps, and his schedule allowed him to be in those checkpoints where he's able to rest. And for me and my dog team, those places aren't the places. I'm kind of a social guy, and when there's people around and whatever, I don't rest well in checkpoints, and I don't do well in checkpoints. It takes me away from my focus. And so by adding more mandatory rest, that's going to hinder me to run the race that I want to run, and I think that most people are going to agree with me on that.
Have you thought much
I
about next
also
year?
wanted to ask you about your dog team. There's a bit of a controversy, which I'm sure that you have been aware of. But can you confirm that 13 dogs came in to Brayburn and that they are all healthy?
Yes, all 13 are doing very well. They look like they could go out and run a race right now. U-Turn was a little dehydrated when he got into Brayburn, and they immediately put him on an IV, and he is bounced back completely, eating well, and doing awesome. And I have no reason to believe that he will not be running the Iditarod as well. At this point, there's a really good chance. Obviously, we're 2 weeks away, and a lot can happen in 2 weeks. But there's a really good chance that all 13 of the dogs that went almost to Rayburn are going to be running the Iditarod as well. So yeah, my dog team there's no question marks in my dog team. They are they're in the best condition you can expect after running 900 miles.
So you know about next year? They talk much about that?
Next year? Oh, we'll be back, and this team is mostly 2, 3, and 4-year-olds. There's 2 7-year-olds, Buddy and Rosie, who are my go-tos. Obviously, late in the race they were, and I think there's no reason to believe that they won't be back either. So, but I also have 10 younger 2 and 3-year-olds back in the kennel right now. That this year there was 3 2-year-olds that beat out veterans that had been in this race for the last 3-4 years. So when you have that happen, and those guys were still in this race, when you have that happen, it just means your team is getting better. If your 2-year-olds are beating out your veterans of multiple races, that's a good thing. It's a gut-wrenching thing to make that decision. I mean, I was making decisions on who I was going to take in this race the morning of the race. And I knew right then, I mean, everyone said, well, that's a good place to be. And it is a good place to be. And obviously, the dogs showed that they had what it took. So yeah, no, this dog team is just getting going. I've been working 8 years to create a dog team that could run this race. And, this is just a bump in the road, a very, very, very big bump in the road. But we're going to get through it. And like I said, hopefully there's a little bit of redemption for me and the dogs in a couple weeks. Go out and run a solid 1,000-mile race in the Iditarod, and then we have a whole year to prepare and compete with the best in the Yukon Quest and Iditarod next year.
Did you have hypothermia out there?
I don't think I did. I think that I was on the cusp. It was just to the point where there was a possibility that I could get there, and that was one of the reasons again that I hit that button. I'm like I said, I have 100% confidence in my abilities to survive, and when that wasn't 100% anymore, that was the reason behind hitting that button, because I knew that hypothermia for me and the dogs was a possibility. It was 30 below zero out there, and at that point I didn't have much straw. I was getting close to being out of dog food, and but we were only 12 miles from the checkpoint, and that's supposed to happen. You're not supposed to have 100 pounds of dog food when you're 12 miles from a checkpoint. These are the reasons that I made the decision that I did.
Last question from me, but I'm just wondering, Brent, if you can give us a comment on what UNEF did for you and maybe the spirit of that.
Yeah, I mean, Hugh Neff, great friend, obviously, and he, I was hoping that he would get there a little bit earlier. Like the whole time I was like, okay, Hugh and Cody are coming. I knew that they were back there. I had no idea how far back they were, and I figured when Hugh got there, the biggest thing for me was I had no one to talk to or bounce anything off of. So I'm out there and I'm talking to my dogs, but they're looking at me like I'm starry-eyed and stupid at that point. And so I didn't know my condition. So I figured if Hugh showed up, he could have a conversation with me. I could figure out exactly what my condition was and then make a decision on what I should do to go forward. And but he took too long to get there. But thankfully he got there right after I did go. And there is no better person than Hugh, because Hugh cares about dogs as much as I do, to be there to care after the dogs. And and the fact that he stopped his race and fed the dogs and was theirs means a lot to me. And I don't expect anything different. I would have done the exact same thing, and I know that he knows that. So I thank Hugh a lot. And again, Scott as well, because it was really good peace of mind to know that there was a legitimate dog musher friend that was going to drive those dogs in, because that was a really traumatizing thing for the dogs to all of a sudden have some random person get on the back of that sled. And I was really worried about that. Like, I'm notorious for not letting anyone drive my dogs. Nobody else drives my dog team all year long. There's one person on this planet that I trust 100% to drive my dogs, and that's Kyla, my handler, Kyla Durham. And she's one of the reasons I have this dog team, and without her, they wouldn't be here. And so there's only a couple of us that ever drive these dogs. So it was a little bit it was gut wrenching to know that someone else was going to have to do it. But knowing that it was Scott, and knowing he had run the quest last year, and obviously is a legitimate dog musher and had been very supportive of me the whole race. It was an amazing judging crew this year. I thank those guys so much for not only dealing with my situation, but all that they're dealing with in this race, and as well as just being supportive of all the mushers. I think all of us had another sense of confidence out there, knowing that like all these guys that were out there judging us know what we're going through and fully understand it, are engaged in our races. And I think that's a huge, and I think we all owe Doug a really big thank you for putting together that crew. And back to Hugh, again, great friend, awesome guy, and I owe him beer after beer after beer for sitting there and hanging out with my dogs and taking care of them and making sure they're well. And then caravanning into the checkpoint, I know helped Scott very much. I know that extra motivation to get in helped a lot, and being around other dogs. I mean, it's just like peers, just like other friends. Those guys, he came and visited me for a week this year in Eureka. Those dogs know each other. You know, they're just like all of us. You know, we have good friends. The dogs do the same thing. So,
Brent, you talked about your own condition, health and fitness, and throughout the race and throughout our history here, we've seen all of the mushers take great care with the dogs, and the dogs are priority. But do you think this might change in terms of how you perceive your own fitness and health throughout the year?
I mean, I think I do a pretty good job. I'm extremely fit at this point. I feel like I prepared myself very well. I think most of my changes have to happen on the race, during the race, at those pivotal moments, like Carmax, like Pelly. I have to do a better job, and I think that has a lot to do with the things that I pack in my food drops. Like, not only the things that I have to cook in my cooker, but also the things that don't have to cook in my cooker. Right now, the things that I don't cook in my cooker are snack food, junk food type stuff. And I need things that are really healthy and really good that I can just take from a frozen state and put in my mouth and be something that's going to give me that positive energy, not fruit snacks. You know, fruit snacks are great, and I'm going to always have fruit snacks. But I also need something that's going to really add and help me, give me that extra energy that I need. And I think I did a really good job, and it's something that, I mean, over 8 years, I've learned a lot. And I did a really good job the first half of the race. Is when I'd stop for 2, 3, 4 hours, I would get that 45 minutes to an hour of sleep for myself. And that is essential. And as the race went on, the adrenaline got more. And I started, like on some of my campouts, I started to worry a little bit about oversleeping. I've had that problem in the past. So like laying down for that 45-minute nap when I'm out in the middle of nowhere, no one around, and my alarm clock is on, red on the battery power, and I'm going, if I fall asleep and this alarm doesn't go off, there goes my race. So then I'm worried I'm not getting that sleep. So I need to have about 10 alarm clocks. I need to do a lot of different things to make sure that I have that confidence to get that 45 minutes of sleep or hour worth of sleep, and then that extra food stuff. And I think I have it all there. It's more of putting it to action during the race at those pivotal moments when I am at my daisiest state during those things. But I live an extremely crazy life in the middle of nowhere. I work all the time. I'm physically fit as any person out there. I think someone said they were checking my pulse, and my pulse was 56 resting heartbeats. I mean, that's pretty low. Like I definitely am an athletic person, and I feel like I prepared myself 100% before the race. I need to do a better job during the race.
Brent, do you think being so tired and so sleep deprived maybe exacerbated the concussion symptoms?
Oh, I think it definitely does. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about concussions, but I definitely think that when your body's in the state that our bodies are this late in the race, everything is tenfold. Everything affects you that much more because your body's wore down. You get a cut on your finger, and I think it affects you more. I mean, I've had this cut on my finger since the beginning of the race, and the whole race, it just got a little bit more painful. I had to make sure I didn't get a bunch of dog food in there and make it get infected. So there's little things like that turn into huge things on the race. And so it's dealing with those little things to make sure they don't turn into bigger things. But when you get a concussion, there isn't a whole lot you can do except for, be aware of your situation. And I like I said, I don't regret anything I did out there, and I think I was as aware as I could possibly be, and made the right decision to throw in the towel. All right. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brent.
Yep. Thank you.